AI for closing. Jay McBain, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and I'm so excited about this panel. This is going to be an amazing conversation with such a wealth of knowledge, experience, and kind of foresight, looking kind of backwards, looking at where we are, and then obviously looking forward. I always think about the quote from Bill Gates that we tend to overestimate what will happen in 2 years and underestimate what's going to happen in 10. And I think AI, specifically generative AI, is right in the middle of that quote. Every day now, and the newspapers this morning had some disappointing pilots, some disappointing early adopter news and things like that. And, while I think all of us think this is transformational, it's generational in terms of a change, the first 2 years isn't going to play out as quickly as we thought. When we think about AI for closing, and I grew up in channels and partnerships, the $105 trillion of world trade this year, 75% of it will be closed by third parties. So you bought your last car from a dealer, you bought your last TV from a retailer, you bought your last jar of peanut butter from a grocer. I start to think as a consumer, how all of those deals close, and how AI will help not only that third party, that local business, the local agent, broker, reseller, retailer, dealer, whoever you may be, but not only the vendor, the distributors, and kind of everything in that supply chain for 75% of that world trade today. So I think a lot about that. I think in B2B terms about the 7 partners now that surround every customer. And regardless of how money changes hands, whether it's on a marketplace or today, 73% of B2B business kind of goes indirectly in some way or another, or direct, it doesn't really matter. But how does that closing process happen? And again, I want to kind of have the panel introduce themselves. I'll kind of go in order in the way they show up on my screen. And kind of a first take when you stepped onto a panel that said AI for closing, what was your initial, like that blink, that first initial reaction to the title, to the session, to how you'd start thinking about it? So Jill, you're first on my list here. Can you introduce yourself and maybe just your initial thoughts?
Sure, absolutely. So delighted to be here on the panel, and of course with you, Jay McBain, my absolute fave in the decade of the ecosystem. And why not expand it to how AI impacts? Really, I think the decade of the ecosystem. We can talk about AI for closing, but look, ABC in sales, I used to do professional speaking around the world, and I said ABC is no longer always be closing. Your buyers don't want to be closed. It's ABC always be connecting. And it's about creating connections for your customers, for the community, and you're never closed, right? It's this ongoing relationship with customers, and it's with partners, and it's with the broader ecosystem. Taking a step back, 24 years in B2B SaaS, early at Salesforce, helped create the whole marketing automation category. Was at Eloqua, was at Marketo, advisor to HubSpot 2 times. Birthed SaaS, and I've always been about the ecosystem. But more importantly, I've always been about the customer and a student of buying. And I really see an incredible role that AI will play. It'll be an accelerant to those who are already great, and it will be an amplifier of those who are not.
That's awesome. So next, Ed.
Hi, Jay. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity to kind of talk about my perspective. My background, I've been doing this for 30 plus years, and started out at Capgemini, Ernst & Young, at Advanced Technologies. So I have more of a technical perspective on what closing means in AI. In addition to that, I worked at EDS. We were bought out by HP, spent 8 years there, and the last 8 years at IBM at a relatively high level, working with a variety of different clients, mostly Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 around the globe. So what we do when we look at AI, and Jill kind of touched on it a little bit, it's been an evolution from a closing perspective in the sense that it's happening naturally. You don't have to put a tremendous amount of pressure on it. Yes, you have calendar guidelines, quarterly reports, et cetera, metrics you have to meet. But at the same time, it's almost like with the creation of customer success being so popular, it's made it so more important now than ever before to have that kind of natural experience with your customer, because you want to have them for a while. And so from a closing perspective, it's almost like closing is going away and it's basically becoming ongoing, AI for ongoing relationships rather than like closing. That's my perspective.
That's fantastic. And we'll be tapping into that wealth of experience on the services side and then how you see this going forward. Mark, you're next on the my list, at least.
Right on. Hey, Mark Ogney, I know several of the people here, and it's wonderful to be on the panel. And Jay, it's been about 1.5 years since we touched base before, but great to see you and happy to be here. I'm the founder of an AI point solution. I think you could wrap it up in the concept of B2B sales and marketing intelligence about the offering, the audiences, and all the knowledge of an organization. And our premise is that context is what's missing in AI today. So we're trying to fill context at the most robust level possible. So we're able to spin up RAGs on the fly. And we're also dabbling now in some bespoke agentic AI for some clients. And that's really, I think, fascinating new road there. When I saw the abstract, Jay, I started thinking and dwelling on the aspect of the partner ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And what hit me is how complex that is. Now, it's really complex in any considered sales cycle. Like, that's complex itself. You start adding permutations of multiple partners and different buyers and understanding the needs and the challenges that you're trying to solve. And oftentimes you're a step away from the conversation. You're not actually really involved in the conversation. So how can you amass that much information? As typically a lot of it is blind to you. But then the typical human, a smart person, can grok 2 to 3 elements of an analysis simultaneously. AI is really good at doing hundreds, if not thousands, of permutations of ideas and dimensions simultaneously. It doesn't make it smart, and AI inherently lacks the context that's needed to make these types of informed decisions within that closing cycle. But like I said before, I mean, if you train it properly, you can at least get the context out there, and it can make better input for you. Thank you, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points. And Jason.
Hi, my name's Jason Naparelski. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I've been around for a long time in technology, about 30 years myself. Former Google, former Oracle, former AWS executive, built a lot of the enterprise functions and worked in big deals. So when I looked at this, my kind of experience, most of my experience is a big deal guy. So when I think about AI, I think about little deals and little things. And so I put some time to think about how this could help, sell big deals, get that private jet close, that golf course close, which is a lot of the deals that I'm involved with. And I do coaching with executives on executive to executive selling. So when I think of it, I'm thinking of it about how do I enable my sellers, my rainmakers, my big boys, to have the psychological weaponry to make a close, to build that relationship, to make that, to feel like they belong in the room, which is a big deal in closing big deals, is that, why am I talking to you if you're a sales guy versus the executives or the top guys? So, I think of that in that regard. And I think about, applications that exist today like Crystal, which uses, AI to kind of do all that personality typing that we all took Myers-Briggs and spent all that time doing, and kind of can shortcut that. And I think those types of tools could actually be useful at the top end as well. So my expertise is in the enterprise side. So I hope I can add value in that part of the conversation if we go there.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be double clicking there and maybe even triple clicking. Michelle?
Hi, great to be here with everybody. My name is Michelle Killebrew. I am somebody who grew up in Silicon Valley, so very much in the tech space, had the opportunity to work with a number of marketing technology companies back when the idea of how we're leveraging behavioral data and CRM data was all very, very new. Happened to be the first SaaS acquisition into IBM. So when Coremetrics was acquired back in 2010 into IBM, small SaaS organization into a large enterprise organization, and I've had the pleasure of working very closely with a number of sales organizations, especially as my career progressed through IBM, through CA Technologies, through PwC, and most recently NTT. So very much a blend of startup and tech-oriented, as well as enterprise. And I think that there's, as we look at how this market is maturing and how much change is happening every moment, I think it's just a fascinating space. And so when I saw the abstract for AI for closing, I thought, there's so much pressure in the marketplace today. Forecast accuracy is so challenging. There are macroeconomic headwinds. How can we really think and discuss about leveraging AI to find the best deals so that we can focus our human efforts on what's going to come across the line and make the biggest impact for the business? So thanks, Jay, back to you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I was a futurist at IBM, and I was lucky enough to live through the Gary Kasparov first computer to beat a chess master, grandmaster. That was the mid-90s. And then later on, the first generative AI kind of public display was on Jeopardy.
Right.
Watching a computer, not only being able to brute force press the button in time, milliseconds, but then 4 seconds later be able to form it in a question and answer everyday trivia. So those were kind of two experiences early in AI that were pretty exciting. All right, cool. So we'll go over to Sean.
Good to be here. Jill, great to see you. It's been a hot minute. You look fabulous. Sean Shepard, serial tech entrepreneur from the Valley, sales entrepreneur, always the sales guy, not the tech guy. I can't even spell HTML. Did 3 venture funds. And then I bought a professional services company that helps large corporations build new startups to create new revenue streams. And about 2 years ago, we launched an AI platform to cannibalize ourselves and automate most of the front end of the innovation function. And to your point, Jay, the Gary Kasparov movie is playing itself out again. Our platform's called Fifth Row, and the reason it's called Fifth Row is because it's about the story of the first time an AI beat the fifth row champion in a game in a game called Go by moving a pebble to that fifth row and blowing this guy's mind. But for me, when I hear the abstract of AI for closing, I actually think the framing is the opposite of what it really should be. It should be AI for buying. I used to say nothing happens until somebody sells something, and now I truly believe 30 years later that nothing happens until somebody buys something. And so I view AI, yes, it's the next industrial revolution. It's replacing brain power with computer power the way that the industrial revolution replaced mechanical power, human power with mechanical power. We call it a synthetic coworker, right? The whole idea is for it to be there to help you focus on more valuable and strategic pursuits around all the things you just talked about, right? How do I build and develop a relationship? How do I identify unmet needs? How do I better understand my customers and what they really care about? We're seeing that happen and play out every single day. And our customers are not just happy about saving time and money with AI. They're more happy about being able to be focused on the more valuable strategic things that they were really hired for. And so that's sort of my take.
That's great. I think that's where we're going to pivot to next is most marketing, sales, CX people in the world, the tens of millions of people, out there closing, will see AI, generative AI, for the first time in the products they use. And so on the MarTech or AdTech stack, there's 14,106 companies kind of lined up out the door of OpenAI, of Anthropic, of Gemini, and others, looking to train and tune and looking to add feature sets. You got 5,000 sales text tools. Salesforce just put out a state of the channel research a couple of weeks ago, kind of saying 86% of now salespeople are familiar and or experimenting and or experts, kind of in using AI for closing. Most of the feedback I got on LinkedIn was, hey, that's very aggressive. So that's kind of the market. And then obviously CX adds thousands of companies on top of that. So what does this mean from a technology perspective, and how are, sales folks and others going to see this for the first time? Jill?
Yeah, I so love actually what Sean just said about AI for buying. I think that it's just outrageous that there are over 14,000 MarTech tools and 5,000 plus sales tech tools. And if you look more holistically at the rev tech stack and the emerging partner tech stack, there's just too much tech. And I think for selling, for marketing, for us, right? I talk about if we spend less time going, or if we spend more time living in market with our buyers, our partners, the community, the ecosystem, then we'll have to spend fewer resources going to market, right? Like live in the market with the buyer, know thy buyer, care about thy buyer. Context is the one word I use to describe sales. And really what I'd love to see is more innovation on how do we leverage AI to help our buyers buy, and to get over the now what used to be FOMO now is FOMO. So we were the fear of missing out, and Matt Dixon in his new book Jolt, it's FOMO, and it's the fear of messing up, and it's FOFU, it's the fear of effing up. I think that there's so much friction in buying, and there's so much complexity in making buying decisions, and there's literally like way too much choice, and there are just too many loud voices. I think that the reps who are going to benefit the most from leveraging AI are the ones that are already great reps, right? They already do the things that buyers need them, want them to do. It's just the enabler, right? A fool with a tool is still a fool. A fool with a bunch of tools is a bigger fool. And a fool with a social tool is an amplified fool. And so I think that we're still just going to miss the mark. We're going to miss the mark on all of this AI stuff and all of these tools that are designed for sellers to get more clever, to get more personalized, but not personal, to leverage information, intelligence, insights. But I just don't think, I think it's a lot of the huge power, totally believe in it. But I think if you suck, AI is going to make you suck more.
Well, Jill, this is why I think you should be on every panel, not only for your opinion, but for those wonderful colloquialisms as well. I want to take notes and listen to the recording so I can repeat them. But the world is going the other way. The average sales marketing stack today is 7 layers. It's going to 8. It's going to 9. We've got a lot of different buyers and buyer roles in the thousands. We've got 193 countries to sell into, and states and provinces. We've got 297 industries to sell into, segments, sectors of the market. We've got thousands, like G2 Crowd is 2,262 categories just of SaaS. And then obviously we've got all the business models, everything else. So there are literally trillions of permutations, and one do-it-all platform doesn't do it. We got to add in those layers, like you said, to personalize, not become personal. So Ed, love to get your kind of take. First on the IBM stuff we were talking about, but second is kind of on the tooling and how we see it.
I mean, it's great to hear IBM being brought up. I mean, it's long history. We're in version like 5.0 of AI when you think about it, because really IBM was in the forefront in 1952. We started basically with checkers and not chess. And so when we look at it, it's kind of like doing business as normal within the organization, because we've been doing this for quite a while. And there's been like a fear of what can AI actually do to overall society. So in the past, we called it cognitive technologies instead of saying artificial intelligence, right? But in the end, we have to control exactly what we want, right? We want to have that co-pilot. We want to have that virtual assistant there to do more than what's done in the past. So how do you do that? There's a lot of technical explanation for all that. But, what Sean was saying earlier resonates with me because I think that ultimately that's what you want to do. It's really AI for buying. Nothing really happens until it's actually bought, right? And so to close, again, goes back to there's so many different facets of it. What you were talking about, Jay, so many different channels to deal with the close. So you close on one channel, then what happens to the next channel? You got to close it again and again and again. And so that complexity, I think, has come about, unfortunately, due to technology advances. And that's what kind of complicated it. And so what we're looking for, what I want to see is more, I think, advancement in simplifying that process by leveraging Gen AI, prompt AI, AI that can build out exactly what's needed for whatever that client wants, right? And then using data, and I'm a big data guy, I love data. And to me, that's what really is the core of what we're talking about here. It's being served up in a better way, more efficient way, and more accurate way. And so you have to look at that data and say, well, this particular customer, this particular size closed this way. How did it close? Well, because of these conditions, and if and what, how did that happen? And that's pretty high level basic as to like the questions you ask. But in reality, to me, that's how you kind of define what you want to do and build out consistently across the board. So then the next big deal that comes along, like Jason was talking about, multi-million-dollar deal, similar conditions, similar situations, et cetera. Then you have the AI for closing already there, ready to wrap it up. So that's kind of my perspective on how we can go forth and make a difference by leveraging AI.
That's great. And if you're speaking data, that's an analyst like me love language. So that's
it's a great way to start.
we're changing up the order a little bit here. So Michelle, you've kind of lived in this technology question,
Absolutely.
the technology stack. Where do we go from here? How does it look next year, 3, 5 years from now? Where does this all end up?
Well, I think part of it is about simplifying what we already have and leveraging it more effectively and efficiently. Because I think, if you think about closing and forecasting, if you have AI that can help you determine, let's say, sector trends, there are so many headwinds that are coming up in the market, and you're starting to see deals close either faster or slower in a particular vertical, or, we're obviously scanning for earnings reports for our big clients to figure out, is that CFO going to intercede right when you're ready to sign the deal, and they're putting the brakes on from a procurement perspective. We're doing that manually, but can you do it en masse? And how can marketing and sales teams, we've seen in marketing the real focus on account-based management over the last couple of years. Can we do that even more effectively by sitting and doing true hand-in-glove ABM planning with the sales team at a different level of both personalization and scale with the same resources that we're doing today? So again, that we can apply our effort and those relationships and those connections where it's going to make the biggest impact for the seller, for the organization, and hopefully for margin. Where are we figuring out our most profitable deals? Are we making those margin calls at the 12th hour, or can we actually hunt more effectively by looking at that across the board? So it's part, how do you leverage that for the insights, and then how do you activate those insights more rapidly across scale?
Yeah, I mean, AI is something that handles permutations and combinations very, very well. That's one of the advances. I can't hear ABM without reminding again how complex when there's 7 partners surrounding and influencing that customer, and how we work, in those kind of permutations. By the way, there's tens of millions of people if you look across all the partner types and who's trying to aggressively, earn their spot around that table. And then as a salesperson, how do you reduce friction and get 2, 3, 4 of those people also supporting your motion and bringing that ABM method to a close. So I think that's right on. And I think AI has a real big role to play early in
And
terms of
helping you figure out your target account list, like who's actually even making that ABM list so that you can be most impactful. And we're seeing, of course, different personas come up. The CFO has always been a persona that we needed to consider, but now it's more critical than ever in making sure that that deal comes across the line.
Absolutely. Mark, let's go. I know you've lived inside of this too for the longest time. How do you see the technology aspect of this playing out?
You know, so first of all, I didn't mention that I actually was in sales and big deal selling for the first 15 years of my life. Biggest deal, this is true, $400 million annual deal was the biggest one that I had signed, pulled over. And that took a year and a half. And so that complexity is real. And I think everybody's really echoed that. But I think the temptation when talking about AI is to look like what's possible around the next corner. And one of the things that I've experienced quite a bit is that organizations become very complex. I mean, IBM is massively complex. What is the likelihood that sales and marketing people are conversant about everything that the organization can do, even the things that they're responsible for selling? And, you know, this is an overgeneralization, but I'll frequently say that, you know, the top 10% of your sellers understand 50 to 70% of what you can do. The next, you know, 90% kind of fall directly to the x-axis pretty quickly, and they tend to find one thing that they know how to sell, and they repeat that, and a broken clock is right twice a day, and pretty soon, you know, they close a deal despite their best effort. And the same thing is true with marketing and content. I mean, it's really complex to write the ABM content that Michelle was talking about. If you're talking about an industry, a persona, a firm size, a need set, like it's too complex. So most people end up writing kind of inside out versions of what they do rather than what they're trying to solve. And so, you know, my thought process here is let's not look around the corner too much further. Like there's plenty of things that AI can help solve today. The democratization of insight about the company and your audiences and things like that, that's something that could be solved today. And I go back to the word I used earlier, which is context. I think context is king when it comes to trying to solve that problem.
And Queen.
Dan Queen, I'm sorry. Yes.
Exactly. Now, does the commission on a $400 million deal get you just a bunch of flowered shirts and you can put your career on, you know, cruise control?
I'm hoping I get the best shirt of the day award. There's probably some trophy that Julia has coming out soon. You know, actually, long story long is that got me to leave the company, and one of my clients hired me because they changed the compensation package for me just before the closing of the deal.
Yeah, you can't win a deal over the course of a year. You got to do it 11 months and 29 days so they don't change your structure. So, Sean, why don't we move in your direction? I know you've got a lot to say on the technology side of this.
Well, I think there's always been, you know, back to Jill's point about a fool with a tool. There's always been an over-reliance on technology, especially for technology sellers.
Yeah.
And we tend to use it more as a crutch. And then it also takes us away from the things that matter most, which is creating human connection, rapport, trust, building relationships, trying to really understand where the unmet needs exist, and how you solve for those things. AI is not going to take your customer out to play golf. They're not going to stand in a trade show booth and attract customers. They're not going to take them to dinner. They're not going to have deep conversations about what's really going on in their life and how their job and their family and their children are impacting their ability to get their stuff done. And they're certainly not going to tell you the truth. You know, it's already hard enough to get somebody to tell you the truth if it creates more work or conflict. And those are the things that still the human in the loop, as the AI world likes to call it, makes so critical. And I think we just fundamentally come at this from the wrong place. I think we tend to think about everything from a place of scale, when I think we need to be thinking about things at the local level first. You know, a doctor can only see so many patients, and a doctor in a small town with 1,200 people behaves very differently than a doctor in a big city. And trying to understand from the ability of that individual sales professional, how their market and their micro segment of a given market works and operates and how you can best serve them, I think is where we need to start. And sure, some of that can be replicated, but some of it can't. And it ultimately comes back down to the human to human model, not the B2B model from my perspective. As far as how people are going to adopt AI and where it's going to be presented and received to them, it's going to be situational. If you're in a big company, they're going to control and manage at an AI policy level what you can and can't see. I'm seeing that all day now as we're selling fifth row. We're selling fifth row as an SOW to 50% of our customers because they're not allowed to use AI. So we're doing it for them, which is transforming SaaS from software as a service to service as a software, which I think is also a thing that's going to be coming. More of the old managed services model, but with SaaS and SaaSifying knowledge work and inputting, replacing consultants and professional services organizations and interns and even lower level task-oriented jobs and white collar knowledge work with these synthetic coworkers that we will manage on their behalf to give them the outcomes that they want and allow them to focus once again on those more strategic things. There's always going to be early adopters and innovators, as Jeffrey Moore would say, in the technology adoption lifecycle that exist in humanity, and regardless of roles, especially in sales. And I think the best sellers have always been very entrepreneurial, always very innovative, and always much early adopters are willing to try new things. So they'll pull stuff from the OpenAI worlds and the ChatGPTs and the Geminis and the Perplexities, and then they'll find little tools like Tuesday AI, which will scan a corporate website and then come up with a list of things where you think you might be able to help them based on what your business does, and do that in minutes, as opposed to what used to take the salesperson forever, right? Or give you an AI synthetic sales engineer or a solutions architect, right? Or a copywriter, or a content person or an asset creator, and all the things that we pull from every day as sellers to be able to do our jobs. And some people are using it at breakneck speed immediately. Others will take time. I think to Mark's point, context matters. If you really understand how LLMs work, you shouldn't just rely on what the LLM is telling you. We've already got proof that they'll lie to you a third of the time, because it just, for whatever reason, wants to please you. But you need to have that context first, because really what AI does is takes a bunch of unstructured data, helps you structure it, synthesize it, process it, synthesize it, and then allow you, if you do use it correctly, to ask it the right questions to get the insights that you need to be able to take action. And that doesn't matter what world you're in. And that's where we're seeing the most power. But I feel it's really easy to lose our humanity with this over-reliance on technology.
Yeah, it's interesting you say humanity. One of the things we're watching really closely for a couple of reasons. By the end of this year, the majority buyer in the technology industry, $5 trillion in hardware, software, services, will be born after 1982. So a millennial-led, both by quantity and budget, buyer, different psychology, different behavior, different journey.
Well, that's a scary thought.
Couple months ago, Gartner did a survey of this cohort, and 75% of them don't want to talk to a human.
Yeah.
And this is buying $1 million in software. This is buying a car in their private lives. This is this idea of digital first or digital only. And whether that changes or not, there's a huge impact on somebody that doesn't want to go golfing, somebody that doesn't want you to know about their kids, somebody that doesn't want to actually have human interaction. And then the role AI plays to kind of buffer that digital first buyer and still be able to personalize it to the point of not becoming personal, but getting to the point where you can win the deal.
Well, I would say quickly, and I know other people need to jump in here, but two things, right? I think we've known for a while that 70% of the buyer's journey happens before they engage the sales professional anyway, or some large majority. They're doing their own research. And that's why we put so much time and money and resources into content creation and self-service asset delivery and all the things that we do from a marketing perspective to put ourselves out there and position ourselves the way so that we're chosen. They'll pick up the phone and call us, or they'll send us an email. Eventually, they have to do it. With respect to the millennial thing, that's a very easy black and white thing for young people to say, but I think over time they're going to learn and they're going to have to come back a little bit. They're still going to need to have those interactions. When they choose to do it and how they choose to do it, remains to be seen. And maybe it'll be 80% of the journey, but I don't think it'll ever be 100. Not certainly when you talk about complex, high risk, high value, transactions.
Yeah. All right, Jason, why don't you bring us home on this technology question?
Yeah, a couple of things that I kind of make this point a lot here, so hopefully it's not a broken record. But one of the things is people get excited about technology for technology's sake all the time. And there's a classic quote that I like to use called NT plus OP equals EOP. And that means new technology plus old process equals expensive old process. And the reality of finding a tool and then finding a use for it is what is being sold and purchased on AI right now versus the other way around. And before, I would caution anyone on this call or listening in, anything, before you buy anything, any product, even AI or anything, you make sure your process is perfect and go through your process and do the old stuff and look through it and make flow charts and understand everything. Because if you automate a broken process, you end up, like Jill was saying, with a exponentially broken process. So I think, those are some really important things that most people forget. The other thing that I always say is that sales is not done in the sales office exclusively. The sales office is an extension of the entire organization, and that if your product doesn't provide 10x value to your prospect, you are not going to close that product unless you trick them with some kind of technique, or you've got the fancy words, or you come in, you're Mr. Guy with the Ferrari, and you impress the guy. He'll buy it for a second, but then he'll return it on the way home. So closing is a holistic aspect, and a lot has to do with qualification, and particularly with companies. If you're trying to sell, and I see this behavior particularly on the high-end enterprise, a client or a rep gets a big name prospect, and they want to close them, but the offering doesn't match up with the client needs, and they will spend endless amounts of time trying to close it. And really, with organically, you should be able to say that doesn't work. And the fear of losing something is the biggest penalty that salespeople have in their own minds, to try to close things that don't fit within the company's organization. And then the final thing I'll say is, like, if I had to fantasize, I won't fantasize here, but if I had to fantasize about what the perfect AI thing would be for closing for my world, and that would be a digital twin, where I could build a profile of the person that I'm trying to close and test against the things that I'm going to say and see what they really react. And I think we're getting fairly close to that, being able to provide a profile where I can practice. Because when the big deal closing world, and I get sweaty just thinking about some of these meetings I've been in. I've got 10 minutes. I got 10 minutes to make this thing. I got to get this right. And if I had some practice, which I never get, it would be a dream come true. So,
yeah, I'll have my digital twin talk to your digital twin.
Yes, well, if I could just quickly say, we already have that in the Fifth Row platform. There's synthetic buyer personas and synthetic seller personas that talk to each other to create interview scripts and insights that we can then go test in the real market for new products as a purpose. But it's not necessarily for the purpose you're talking about, but it does already exist, and it's pretty good.
All right, I'll buy two.
I'll interject as well. We've actually built the other way around, which is a seller. When you have the corpus of data about the persona, your challenge, the challenges, needs, capabilities, and all this, we have a multi-select where you could say, okay, it's this industry, firm size, buyer persona. You could fill in the blanks and provide additional information, and it'll feed back. Here's the top 3 subjects that you should be talking to this person about. Here's some testing questions to see if it prompts engagement with them. If not, move to the next one. If yes, then here's some discovery. Here's your value props in that area. So we've solved it the other way around, which is prior to the call to be able to test your assertions.
That's great. So Jason, thanks for bringing up qualification upstream as well. That was one of the questions that came in from the audience. But you got to be careful when you're talking to somebody that's been around a while. I'm going through your formula, NT plus OP. I'm thinking Microsoft Windows NT plus that's okay with a millennial, but you get into Gen X or baby boomers, and we start dialing way back on these acronyms. That's funny. So where I want to kind of go next is let's roll up our sleeves and get tactical. We got over 500 salespeople listening right now. I'm going to listen once. I might replay this tomorrow. I'm going to think about it over the weekend. You get to work Monday morning, whether in your cubicle or working from home. But what do you do first? What do you take from this? And, do I go build a digital twin? Do I go and use some of these features and the products that I'm staring at? Do I go call a customer and, ask questions? So Jill, where would you take that answer, just as tactical as you could take it in terms of where to start Monday morning?
Yeah, I am all about the use case. I remember, gosh, when I was 2000, one of the first 100 employees at Salesforce, boy, did I love to demo the product. Oh my gosh. And if I was demoing the product and comparing it to Siebel, whew, I mean, just a dream, right? Not even a fantasy, but a dream come true. And, we would do these generic demos and at Eloqua as well. And then we really started focusing on what are the use cases in the context of the customer and the maturity that they had reached. So I would actually, if I'm a salesperson, I would think about how I'm spending my time, right? And where am I wasting? Where do I feel like I am not doing that? I'm not doing my expense report. Like, I hate doing my expense report because it takes me away from doing the things that I want to do, which is how do I serve the customer? And so I would just really think about these things that you do that take a lot of time that you dread having to do, and then figure out, is there a way to leverage AI, right? Is there a tool out there? And I'm telling you, ChatGPT is going to get you a long way, right? I would think, ask your other peers, right? Like, that's where I say influence is the new inbound. We talk about all this like multi-threading inside our organizations. What we don't do enough of is eco-threading, right? What's outside of our four walls? Where does the influence and trust already exist? Who are our buyers already, trust and work with and buy from? And so I think like this using AI to understand and map out your buyer's ecosystem, right? The communities that they belong to, the peers that they trust. You can leverage AI to do that research for you. That's going to get you where nobody else is going, right? Everybody's thinking inside their four walls and inside the buyer's four walls. We're not thinking about this eco thread rather than just internally this multi-thread. And I think it was either Ed or Mark, or apologies, but the complexity of this ecosystem, this partner ecosystem. Not only do you have, let's just take one partner. You have one partner, but you have the go-to-market teams within each partner, right? So it isn't just like coordinating two partners and two partner people. It's like, how do you get your product teams aligned, your marketing teams aligned, your sales teams aligned, your CS teams aligned, your pro-serve teams aligned? And so this internal orchestration with your multiple partners, and then let's add 7 partners in a deal, right? This is the most difficult go-to-market motion we will ever see. But it is the one that you need to get ahead of because it is where the buying is happening. Sorry, I know I went off script in terms of like staying in the context of the question, but I wanted to make the point, given this is the decade of the ecosystem, and Jay McBain, you are our host, and I think it's quite relevant. I don't want to talk about what everybody else is talking about.
Yeah, it's good. So I think I might have been one of the first people you demoed Salesforce to, because at IBM, we had $1 billion investment in Siebel. And I was one of the first sales managers to put Salesforce on my personal credit card. And that happened with my neighbors and friends around the world. And I think IBM is one of the biggest Salesforce clients now. After $1 billion with a big investment in Siebel, kind of got flushed down the toilet. So
Salesforce should be charged with a war crime. There's no bigger penalty that's been assessed to salespeople than Salesforce.com. It's the worst thing that's ever happened to the go-to-market world.
All right. Well, Jason, you go next.
Yeah, bring it,
Jason.
Jason.
For the 73% of salespeople around the world who are loading up Salesforce on Monday morning, what's
Yeah.
your advice?
I mean, there's no worse. So all the data of Salesforce comes from the salespeople, and there's no worse personality type of person to input accurate data in than a salesperson. So it's always been garbage in, garbage out. It's never been good. The Salesforce hygiene, if you look that up, that's the most popular search on Salesforce. Like, how do you get clean on Salesforce is the big time. It's not about closing business. It's once you install Salesforce, Salesforce becomes its own bureaucracy within your organization that feeds and eats itself. So
Well, CRMs were never built for salespeople. They were built for managers.
exactly right. So my first step is get rid of Salesforce and everything like it. That's step one. And that's where AI helpfully will help a great deal of collecting data.
Does Einstein fix this in terms of the garbage in, garbage out equation in your mind?
Well, I mean, I think that any way you can collect data from a third-party perspective, so non-personal, non-interdicted, without your personal biases and feelings and everything into it, I think you're better off and if, I mean, you should not have your people that are outgoing and gregarious and other things entering anything. They should be able to put it in or have it be collected automatically. And I think AI helps a lot in that area, really, in a big way.
All right, cool. Sean, why don't we bring you in on this debate? Again, let's go back to Monday morning. What do you do, to make your numbers and to take most advantage of this generational trend?
Well, I 100% agree with Jill that identify a use case that's painful and expensive that might be automated, which has always been my investment thesis as a VC. Those are the things that actually survive and last. What's painful, what's expensive that I could automate tomorrow, right? And look at your current bottom of the funnel, top priority stuff, and figure out how you can start looking into other ways of doing that and just start researching there. And you will find a lot of different tools to help you do that. To simplify it, right? For those that might be afraid of AI, it's just the next generation of Google.
Yeah.
Think about it that way, right? That's all it is. It's just a more detailed, more interactive, more advanced way of researching things to get the information that you want that you can start to use to help you better do your job. Start there. And then from that, and to Jill's point, talk to people inside your industry, outside. I get my best ideas from outside the industries that I'm playing in, because at the end of the day, it kind of always comes back to fundamental human behavior and how you can advance performance for humans. And that's where I would start. We keep it that simple.
That's good. I like that. Mark, why don't you jump in on Monday morning?
Yeah. So this is a slow pitch over home plate for me. We have a 4-step process that we espouse, and I actually wrote about it a month or two ago in Martech. So you can look at my last name and Martech and get to it. But we see the need, the goal, the challenge, the path. So the 4-step process, the need, the use case. And Jill and Sean were focused on that. And everybody has high value use cases. I think the approach is to just whiteboard, start writing down things that are most challenging for you. But think of the goal. Most people mix this up. They think of AI and they instantly think of efficiency. The goal is effectiveness. And that's part of the problem of, if you have the wrong process or things like that, doing more of it just doesn't, make it better. So focus on the use cases and then look at it through the lens of effectiveness. How can this become, higher converting, closing process? What's needed to do that? What are the use cases that might be able to help that? The third one is the challenge, and that's context. I brought that up a couple times. And for all that AI knows, it could tell you about farming best practices in the sub-Saharan desert, but it can't tell you why your persona needs your particular solution more than a competitor in this situation. It understands a vanilla view of the world, and it's really awful at decomposing. So if you have the context, it's amazing at aggregating and connecting the information properly, but it's awful at decomposing the information. Then the path, the fourth one, we see three different ways there. So there's native, like OpenAI, so ChatGPT or whatever, pick whatever you want there. I think one of the things that people miss is that ChatGPT is a consumer interface into an enterprise product. And so they conflate the chatbot with AI. And think of it like a brain, a person. When you pay $20 a month, you get a really small brain. And then when you fill it up with information, it gets rid of the first in, first out basis. Whereas when you have direct connections into OpenAI or another, API connection into a large language model, the brain is much, much bigger and has a much more sophisticated way to get rid of excess context. As well, you can only speak a little bit to it and get a little bit back. So that's native. Embedded, so Salesforce, Einstein, or whatever it is that you're using today, what could be, I'm searching now for different ways that you can think of solving it. And the last one is a purpose-built tool. Sounds like Sean's working on stuff, we're working on stuff, but they're purpose-built to solve a problem and to do it really, really well. So that's what I'd say, need, goal, challenge, path.
Yeah, I like what you said about efficiency and effectiveness. There was a survey, one of the early, kind of downsides to generative AI is that 73% of people that are using it think it's added workload because of we just had a question come from the audience as well about trusting AI at 100% needs human oversight. So 73% of people are saying that I need to reread, I need to relook at any workflow, anything that's owned by AI. It's now added to my workday that I have to make sure that it's authorized and approved and not hallucinating as it reaches my client.
That's
So
why we're
100%
about services and software, right? You still need a human in the loop, somebody who can check these things. It can get you 80% of the way there, so you can focus on the last, 20%. It's still more efficient and can be more effective if it understands what the outcomes are and the goals are, to Mark's point.
So I think the choice of the path, though, really predicts the, like the hallucination and all the other things where they say that it's added to their workload. Working with ChatGPT, hallucination is really inherent there. You can't trust it. It just makes shit up. Why? Because you've expanded beyond the context window that they allow you for $20 a month. So hallucination is a daily event in ChatGPT, but when you're operating directly within a large language model, it happens, but it's far less a concern. I mean, almost like a 1% concern. Now, to the point that you made, Jay, I would never say trust something 100%. I mean, my goal with our company is to get 90% better. I think ChatGPT can get you 10 or 15% better because you can ideate with it. You can do an outline and stuff like that, but you have to fill in the blanks. Otherwise, it's going to hallucinate and do some weird shit. So in all cases, it's the human in the loop that has to check this stuff, but the choice of where you go to is going to define the amount of context, the challenges that you have. And I think ultimately people end up spending more money trying to learn a consumer tool of ChatGPT, their time. Time is valuable.
Yeah.
Like they spend more money doing that than finding a custom solution or something that could actually provide better answers faster.
Yeah, there's actually we'll close on this, but there's actually a legal and compliance hurdle to this as well. So the courts in Canada came down on Air Canada and said one hallucinations by its chatbot who, guaranteed a bereavement fee or whatever it was, they have to stand behind. They went to court with the idea that, if there's a glitch at Air Canada and all flights are marked down to $1, they can step away from that, call it a technology glitch, and they're not liable to sell flights for $1. But the same technology glitch that can cause a hallucination, they are now liable for. So this whole idea now of, legal people getting involved and compliance, governance, and everything else, what if other courts around the world agree with that? That now puts these hallucinations as another line item of risk on your company. So I want to move over. We've got 5 minutes left. I want to give Ed and Michelle good time to kind of answer this question and kind of close us off. I'm going to go to Ed first.
Well, that's really interesting you bring it up, Jay, because IBM has announced, and this happened about a year and a half or so ago, that we would back 100% or any kind of AI that we create that hallucinations actually distort, and we would go into court and defend it. So that's how we got to back our data and how we collect it and how our overall AI stacks, how they're built, et cetera. So it is an area that needs to be looked at, and of course, regulating that, it's tough. And you know what Mark was saying basically about how you take a look at hallucinations and can you trust it 100%? No, you really can't. But at the same time, it's the context of where those models are and how they're built out that makes a huge difference. And at IBM, we have a Granite model, and that Granite model is one of the best, most reliable type of models you can actually use today. And so that's where it kind of starts when you start to assemble the data, comprise it, put it in that model, and then build it out for the overall technology stack of where you're going to access it. So when you look at it, hallucinations are going to be a threat in a sense for the adoption of what you're trying to do. But I think the best hallucination really is, I'm bringing this back to closing, right? Is that there's some error in your favor that the hallucination does on a contract, and you end up going beyond any kind of money you want, right? I mean, that's the best hallucination, right, guys? That's what I want.
That's funny. So a quick one is Monday morning. You're coming to work. What do you do first, Ed?
Well, the first thing that I do and that I see a lot of my peers do is it's like re-engineering. Remember, IBM has that kind of mentality, engineering background, you know, train people to be salespeople. And so it's like, all right, I got to close on this date. I got to hit this target. How am I going to do this? What kind of tools that we can use? And we have internal AI tools that allow us to look at personas, like use cases that we brought up earlier. All those things are then put within a tool we use, and out comes a close proximity of how to be able to close in that certain period of time and to hit your objective. So that, I mean, that's really one way I would start. Really, it's like, and if you don't have a tool like that, you don't have an AI bot that can help you, then do it manually, do it, whiteboard it, sketch it out, exactly how you're going to do it, timetables, etc. It helps immensely.
That's awesome. So let's close this off. I'm going to put the whole future of AI on Michelle's shoulders to close. Not only answering the Monday morning question, the first thing you would do, but you know, everything you've heard in the last 58 minutes. How would you kind of close us off and you know, kind of give us guidance looking forward?
Absolutely. Well, I think, you know, we've got such an amazing attendance to the session as people are trying to, you know, upskill themselves and stay with a finger on the pulse. And so I commend all of you for joining us, because I think those are some of the things that starting on Monday morning that you should be doing. Leveraging some basics, as Jill started out by optimizing your own calendar and time, looking through what's worked and what hasn't, and building off what Ed just said, looking at those large deals and putting together an ideal path. Those are some easy things that you can do starting on Monday to get your fingers in the tools and start learning them and demystifying them. Because once you start leveraging them, they become much more approachable, and you can start to have those broader conversations. Talk with your peers, see what little tips and tricks that they are using to optimize their days, their weeks. Sit with your marketing team. Marketing teams have been rolling up their sleeves on how to make go-to-market efficient from that marketing perspective. You'll garner ideas, you'll share what you need from them, and have a dialogue that will make your whole go-to-market process in terms of targeting and messaging much more effective. And just stay, I guess, hungry to learn and stay engaged. And it's going to be a really fascinating ride over the next couple of years as we see how people consume information, where those arbitrage opportunities are, and how the sales process changes. So good luck.
Thank you so much for that. And as good closers, we close on time, we close on budget. I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank everyone for joining, and look forward to the next session.
Thank you very much.